Can someone tell me how Aatrox doesn't get nerfed, but Eclipse does? What's up, Game Leapers? This is Iggs, and in today's video, 12.19 tier list. This is the updated version because the changes for 12.19 got released on Twitter not so long ago, so I'm going to be bringing you our predictions for the champions who are going to be broken. Now, to master any of the champions guys we mentioned, or any of the roles on the Rift, make sure you check out the Game Leap website linked in the description and comment section, because our players, coaches from around the world that have challenger experience playing and coaching, we are uploading daily videos to help you improve and peak on the Rift. So get that exclusive access to our library of content by signing up. You will not be disappointed, and let's get in to the tier list. Now we will start in the top lane, and in Broken, what is changing for 12.19? Well, 3 of these champions aren't changing, Aatrox, Darius, and Garen, but there is a new inclusion here, this being Susan, or more commonly known as Nasus. Now the reason Nasus is here is because he's getting some very sizable buffs. Literally, because your ultimate, your Q range when your ultimate is going, is actually doubling, so from 25 to 50. This is huge. Also, the tick rate, so the actual amount of damage your ultimate deals to nearby enemies, this will tick at twice the rate. So instead of dealing damage every 1 second, it's dealing damage every half a second now. These are just massive. But not only that, there's one more buff, that's to your W, so your Wither. The actual attack speed slow, so when you W an enemy champion, that is going to scale more from the actual movement speed slow. So instead of scaling from 50% of the slow, it's now 75% of the slow. This is obviously important for the top lane because lots of champions rely on attack speed. But you could even think about playing Nasus support because your Wither is the key ability, and this got buffed, so you might consider picking this into attack speed mobile AD carries because you will cripple them. So that's why Nasus isn't broken, and kind of like I mentioned at the start of this video, I said that Eclipse was getting nerfed. So how on earth is Aatrox going to be broken still? The reason for this is because you can go Gore Drinker, and his win rates with Gore Drinker are still very high in the champion because of the Q sweet spot damage buff a few patches ago. He will easily still be one of the best top laners. Now that Eclipse nerf I'm talking about, it is actually real. So the lethality is going down from 18 to 12. So in terms of dealing damage to squishy enemy champions with no armor, you won't be able to one-shot them as much. And even though the attack damage is going up by 5, the loss of lethality is a big hit, and hopefully this will encourage lots of champions, especially assassins, to start building Duskblade and Prowler's Claw instead of Eclipse. Now, other champions in the top lane we have to talk about, Udyr is getting some really nice buffs. So the healing you have based off minions for your W, this is up 10%. Your ultimate damage to minions is actually increased at rank 1 and rank 2, so you might consider just having 1 point in your ultimate, but then maxing your Q, because your Q is actually dealing more damage to minions now. So it's scaling from 80 to 160 based on how many points you have in it. So these are really nice buffs to Udyr, and that's why he has jumped into Low-Key Broken. Now you can also see alongside Udyr and Low-Key Broken, we have Malphite. Reason Malph is here is because your W and ultimate, you're getting more AP in them. This means that if you're building something like Demonic Embrace in the top lane, which is viable of course, because it does provide you with a bit of HP, and remember, the more HP you have, so if you think about going something like Frostfire Gauntlet, the HP from the Mythic passive combined with a Demonic Embrace, you're actually going to have a lot of AP in your kit, and this will get pumped into your buffed abilities. Now we also have Shyvana here, who's getting buffed in terms of her fighter actual bruiser build, so the attack damage in your kit is actually getting buffed. This is awesome for a type of Death's Dance Shyvana build. And alongside her, the other champion getting changed in 12.19 is the Kench. So will the Kench be unbenched in 12.19? Well, I think it's a bit like Malphite, because you're going to have more AP in your kit in 12.19. For Tahm Kench, exactly like Malphite, you can really make use of Demonic Embrace to get the most out of these buffs. And for lots of players and the majority of elos, Tahm Kench is an annoying champion to play against in the top lane, so I think he'll be even better. So that was the top lane, guys. Just make sure you don't play Azir or Ryze, even though Ryze is getting buffed. And let's head to the mid lane tier list and start off by talking about it. So for Ryze in 12.19, your Q's AP ratio is going up 5%, and your W's AP ratio is going up 10%. Now, what does this mean? Well, AP ratios just mean scaling, right? So in the mid to late game, as you start getting more AP, your Q and your W will deal more damage. But the issue for Ryze, and the reason why he's staying in C tier, well, he's actually gone up from Ryze tier, but the reason he's still low down is because his survivability, like, it is just too hard to make work. Remember, at the start of the season, Ryze was so broken, right? Because you could build Fimbulwinter and kind of like a tanky setup. You're very hard to kill, but you still deal decent damage. That's what was keeping him really OP. But because he has lost pretty much all of that, Fimbulwinter is not what it was. Even with these buffs, right, dealing a bit more damage, it still doesn't change the actual problem Ryze has. Now, if we do a bit of a flip here and head to the top of the tier list, we can see that we have Fizz, Syndra, Vex, and Zed. Now, Vex and Zed, you guys should know about, right, from our previous tier list. They are still going to be broken. There's no nerfs that are really affecting them. Maybe Eclipse for Zed, but you can still go Duskblade, Prowler's Claw. If you need the armor penetration, you have Serylda's Grudge there as well, so shouldn't be that big of an issue. But for Fizz and Syndra, so for Fizz, your AP ratio and your E is getting buffed. The buff to your mana cost in your E is not actually happening at the moment anyway, so that still means you're going to have to go a mana mythic, which kind of of slows you down a little bit. You'd much rather build just straight up damage, right, and go full assassin Fizz, but having more AP in your E, which is really the key ability, the big damage threat, that is huge, and that's why Fizz is going to be busted. And Syndra, hopefully you guys have listened to our previous videos, the extra E range, the ultimate executing champions at 15% of their max HP, like that is just absurd. Also having 2 Qs, once you have enough passive stacks, it just sounds incredibly broken, and I kind of feel sorry for any Syndra main out there, because she wasn't really picked before or banned, now she's going to be picked and banned in every single game. Now what about other mid laners? Well, you can see that Echo has jumped from B tier into low-key broken. Now why is this? That's because Echo is receiving a couple of nice buffs as well. So your passive's AP ratio is up 10%, your ultimate's damage, the base damage, is up a whopping 50, and the AP ratio in your ultimate is also up 25%. So your scaling is better, even though you already scaled so well. So if you can get to the mid to late game, you will be even stronger. But maybe the issue for Echo is that you still don't really have that wave clear to deal with the other champions in the mid lane who do have wave clear. So all you're doing is just collecting minion waves. You can't shove and roam like you used to. So I don't know if this will make him better in the mid lane. Remember, the laning phase, not much is really changing here. It's just your base damage and your ultimate. That's about it. And next to Echo and low-key broken, guys, champions who are actually getting buffed in this patch, but Riot didn't actually specify, these are Kai'Sa and Nunu. So Kai'Sa's passive is getting buffed, and because there is AP in your passive, maybe playing Kai'Sa in the mid lane with some sort of Nash's Tooth, Luden's Tempest setup, this will actually just be good again. And Nunu is here because the AP ratio in your ultimate is going up. And just remember, we have detailed all of these changes in our 12-19 leagues video, so if you want all the gossip, make sure you check that out. So level 1, snowballing Nunu into the bot lane, getting a double kill. I think he's going to be low-key broken as well because you have more AP in your kit. It might be hard to pull off, so do be careful about just blind picking Nunu and picking him all the time. But yes, he is stronger and maybe a low-key broken pick. Just make sure, guys, if you are playing in the mid lane, don't pick Azir. Now heading into the jungle, so we talked about Echo, okay? So the changes to Echo, this is why he has moved up to S tier. Now just above Echo, we can see the broken champions, Bel'Veth, Fiddlesticks, Master Yi. Nothing is really changing, right? Now Master Yi is getting nerfed, I understand. So the AD growth you have, so each level, as you level up, you're getting less AD, right? Okay, so your mid to late game, the scaling, gonna be worse off. Your E's true damage ratio is also down 5%, scaling less off your bonus AD. But here's the issue. Master Yi's attack range is still what it was after they buffed it, so he got an extra 50 range just like Bel'Veth, and he can still choose where he ends up out of his Alpha Strike. There is completely zero counterplay to this, and even if his damage and scaling is going to be worse in 12-19 because of these nerfs, he will still be extremely broken, especially in lower elos. There's no way I cannot put him outside of the broken tier. And just like Master Yi, Rek'Sai is getting nerfed as well. So Rek'Sai's base AD is going down by 3 from 64 to 61. Now for an early game champion, base stats, they mean something, right? So base AD going down by 3. This means Rek'Sai's ganks. This means his clear as well. It's going to be slower, going to be less potent. So you're going to have less kills in the early game. Because of this, you can maybe even get pressured by the enemy jungler a little bit more, and you're not going to snowball as hard, especially when you go Prowler's Claw, right? Because that item doesn't really scale too well. You need to end games quickly. This just means it's going to be a lot harder to do so. That's why Rek'Sai has gone from S tier all the way down to B tier. Can't remember the last time he wasn't S tier, and that's just because these are serious nerfs. Now, other champions in the jungle you can consider playing. Maokai is getting buffed next patch because your damage to jungle monsters is going up. We also have Nunu because of that absolute zero buff I talked about, and we also have Olaf because he does so well into a lot of CC teams, and I think the champion is still insanely good into certain team compositions. We have Shyvana because of the AD ratio buffs I talked about, and then we have Zed because this champion with 2 adaptive force in your minor runes, because of the energy buffs a couple of patches ago to your E, you clear camps so quickly, and I just think jungle Zed, because your clear speed is so good now, it's just like a free scaling role, because once you do get to level 11 and then 16, and you have your W on such a low cooldown when you land your spells, I think it's very abusable, so consider picking Zed in the jungle in 12-19, just like the other champs we mentioned. And once again, do not pick Azir. Now heading down to the bot lane for the 12-19 Rift, who is getting buffed, who's getting nerfed? Well, Jinx is getting buffed. So Jinx's base attack damage is going up by 2. Nice for the early game. Your early game, because of the Fishbones nerfs earlier in the season, it's just been a lot weaker and harder to get out of. So this does help, and your R's base damage to primary targets is also up by 50. This is nice, especially in the early game, so when you hit level 6, a bit more power there. But the issue for Jinx is just like I mentioned, the Fishbones nerfs, so the mana, the range, it just makes your laning phase difficult, even with this extra attack damage. Okay, it is a legitimate buff, but still the problem for Jinx is going to exist, kind of like how I talked about for Ryze in a way, but she has moved up to A tier. The only real issue for Jinx, I guess, at the moment is there are a lot of AD carries who are just innately stronger. So Draven, Kai'Sa with the bus in 12-19, Miss Fortune, even though she got nerfed in 12-18, still very good. Samira, Caitlyn, Jhin, Nyla, Tristana, Twitch is getting buffed in 12-19 as well, and then Yasuo because he does so well against so many of the broken champions. These are all just better picks than picking Jinx. Now, low-key broken champions, we have Heimerdinger and then we have Seraphine. Now, these two champions, by rushing a Leandra's Anguish and making use of Comet with Scorch, which is just deadlier these days because of the 12-14 sustain nerfs, their poke is very annoying to deal with, so consider picking these two champions in the right champion selection. And as far as the Eclipse nerf goes, we should definitely mention here that a champion like Draven is actually going to be affected by this. Now, does this mean you have to go something like Shieldbert? Because the current Draven build is you get a Serrated Dirk into Essence Reaver into an Eclipse. So does this mean you're going to go back to a bit more attack speed and crit Draven? So Draven mains, let me know down below what you think the new build is going to be, but I still think the champion innately is going to be broken. Remember as well, Serrated Dirk is not getting nerfed, so all of the lethality in Dirk is still going to be there. It's still going to be a nice spike, so that's why I've kept Draven in broken. Just make sure once again you don't pick Azir. Now, of course, guys, the final role, this is the support role. Now, as far as supports go, there's only really one, unless you want to include Nasus here, who's explicitly getting changed in 12-19. Now, I have mentioned that other champions, like Blitzcrank, Tahm Kench maybe if you want to play him as a support. These champions are actually getting some buffs and some AP buffs in 12-19, and this is kind of why Blitzcrank is still in broken, but let's go back to Sona for a second. Your Q's base damage is increasing by 10. This is nice, right? Especially early on, going to make you a bit more of a lane bully. And the other change is to your E slow. This is increasing by 10%. So Sona's early game, her poke, and the actual slow to the enemy champions, this just makes her better during the early game. And to be honest, Sona was still doing very well before these buffs. In 12-19, you might even argue that she's going to be one of the 4 broken supports. So those were the updated tier lists, guys, for 12-19. Any questions, any thoughts, leave them in the comment section. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, please remember to leave a like down below. It helps us out a bunch. And until our next Season 12 upload, this has been Iggs. Peace.